Good evening. I'm Steve Jewell, President and CEO of the Pines at Davidson, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this first virtual celebration of the Jetton Deferred Giving Society. Even though we aren't in the same space, we are together in spirit through the wonders of technology. Throughout these challenging times of the coronavirus, there are opportunities to appreciate and share refreshed experiences of what has always been here and indeed is right in front of us. The gifts of nature that are abundant on this campus, inspirational words of wisdom and kindness, moving works of art and craft, and most of all, openness to care about and include every member of the Pines community, and when the need arises, the willingness and grace to be cared for by this family. Tonight, we're delighted to honor and thank everyone here who has dedicated a gift to the Pines beyond the end of their own future. Your support is a remarkable testimony to the culture of generosity that always has and always will touch every resident, board member, staff member, and beyond. We're so humbly grateful for your remarkable role in ensuring the future of this unique community, which will always be what it was meant to be, inviting, caring, and inclusive. In a moment, Mei-Ling Watson, a member of our board of directors and chair of the development committee, will introduce our two intriguing speakers. Again, thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for what you have done for the Pines at Davidson. We hope you all enjoy this evening together.
Good evening. I'm Mei-Ling Watson, chair of the board's development committee. And on behalf of the board of directors, I want to say a big thank you to all members of the Jetton Deferred Giving Society, including the 4 individuals who joined this year. Your support will directly touch the lives of our residents and will help to ensure the Pines' continued strong future. Please know how much we appreciate your leadership and your generosity. Now I'm delighted to introduce our 2 special guests, both of whom you may know somewhat, but tonight you will get to know them even better. Our first guest is Mike Collins, host of WFAE Radio's award-winning show, Charlotte Talks. For 22 years on the show, Mike has interviewed and moderated conversations with key politicians, artists, and other leaders on a local, national, and international level. He's also an actor and director and executive producer of Charlotte Squawks, an annual musical parody of all things Charlotte that I highly recommend. Our second special guest is Jean Berg, who is a resident of the Pines. For many years, Jean has hosted a monthly interview at the Pines with a surprise resident guest, where the audience learns much more about someone they thought they already knew. Jean is a former TV show host and has had many other professional adventures, including officiating more than 800 religious weddings in Cozumel, Mexico, and authoring a book about her experience. Tonight, we're delighted that Mike and Jean will interview each other. Perhaps they will shed some light on how to shape engaging conversations that help us get to know each other better. And so, Mike, I will let you get this conversation started.
I think I'm on. I'm technologically challenged, even though I've been on radio for 152 years, I think. Let's bring Dares, Jean. Hi, Jean. How are you?
Hi, Mike.
Good to see you. I want to start out with some of the things that Mei-Ling just listed about you, because your history is absolutely fascinating. You have a bachelor's in sociology, a master's in theology. You've officiated at more than 800 weddings, I believe, mainly in Mexico. You wrote a book about that. You've worked in a bunch of high-level jobs, several of which would have been enough for most people, but they obviously weren't enough for you. And then you were tapped to host.
Well, they were low pay and high.
Then you were tapped to host a TV show. I think it was in St. Louis about contemporary issues facing the church. Had you ever done any television or any interviews before they tapped you for that job?
Not really. I'm a good sociologist, Mike, and I love people's stories. And so I listen to, just like you do, to listen to people's stories, and everybody has a story.
Right.
And so I learned, obviously, based on this evening, I haven't learned very well, but I've learned how to ask questions just like you do. Only you do it professionally, and I did it as a hobby.
But you know, there's a difference. There's a difference between having a conversation with somebody one-on-one, even in Zoom world. There's also a difference between doing radio and television. I've done both, and television to me strikes me as more artificial because you've got lights and camera and people running around behind the cameras while you're trying to have this intimate conversation with somebody. And for somebody to do it for the very first time, I think it's really hard. You didn't find it difficult?
Well, they offered me I even forget what's the prompter thing is.
Teleprompter, yeah.
And I said, I never want to start that road. So I did. Unlike you, Mike, and this is one thing, because I've listened to you for a long time. You really are a household word here, is that.
Don't say the word, please.
No. I don't prepare ahead of time. So when I meet like you, I haven't studied your bio. And the only time I would do that would be if I had an author, and then I would read their book, or I would pretend to have read their book. I would skim their book. But other than that, I learn as they speak. And so it's a revelation to both of us.
Did you do it that way on TV, or are you doing it that way when you interview folks at the Pines?
It's TV.
Okay.
I didn't make notes.
That is so brave to me. Neither did Larry. Larry King never took a note. Larry King would often, I'm told, would walk into the studio and ask his producer who the guest was, and off they'd go to the races.
Yeah.
I can't do that. I'm too afraid to do that. I know the answer to every question I ask before I ask it most of the time.
But you also know ahead of time what you're going to get.
Yeah.
I've had some surprises, and I suppose you have. Have you had any? Can you think of an interview that kind of rocked your world at the moment?
Yeah, I've had some surprises where I thought the guest was going to be terrific, and they were horrible. And other interviews that I walked in dreading because I thought, I've heard about this person and they're not going to be cooperative, and the exact opposite thing happened. I mean, Robert Goulet came into the studio, this is 100 years ago now, but he came and he said, I'm only going to give you 10 minutes. That's all I got, 10 minutes. I said, but we're on for an hour. Nope, 10 minutes, that's it. And I thought, okay, well, I got nothing else, so I'm going to have to figure out a way to keep him for the hour. And within moments, I had him singing, If Ever I Would Leave You. And I think that sealed the deal. Once he started singing, he was okay. But yeah, I've had a lot of surprises.
Yeah, and I like that. Yeah, even if it catches me on my left foot, I still appreciate. I've had a lot of kids, interviewed a lot of kids, and you never know what you're going to get.
No.
I had a choral group one time that they had made a trip to China and Japan, and they were local kids in St. Louis. So I had them come in to sing. And with them came a whole lot of mamas who came to drive and to watch. And the choir director said to me, I can deal with the kids, but you got to deal with these mothers. So I went over to this panel of mothers waiting, and I said, now listen, if you rattle as much as a Kleenex, you are out of here. And they said, okay. And they were quiet as mice. And the choir director was astonished because she'd had trouble with them everywhere they had performed, because they fussed over their kids and waved and did mother things, which were terrible. So, it's fun. It's an adventure. Everyone is an adventure.
I kind of stumbled into interviewing. It wasn't what I set out to do, and somehow, somehow it's become all that I do at the moment. But what you do at the Pines to me is really interesting, because people think it's special to interview famous people. And although I have found that famous people are like all of us, they put their pants on one leg at a time, and they have their own story to tell. And they're really the nicest famous people are as down to earth as anybody you would meet. It is everybody, the everyman, who is interesting to me, because everybody has a story, and you get that story out of those people. when you do that at the Pines, do you have a specific time frame that you're aiming to hit to fill?
I have
How
an
do
hour. Yeah.
you have an hour?
I have, but I use it. I try to keep it to 45 minutes because by then we really pretty much have said, and that allows for some questions. But see, the thing is, because we live here, there's 400 of us wandering around this place, and we think we know each other, and at some level we do. But what is fun about these interviews, and they're fun with the ones you do too, but this is a different circumstance. People have no idea. They've known somebody for 10 years, but they have no idea what it is that they did in their life. And that's what started all this, was reading an obituary of somebody and saying, nobody knew anything about this guy that was really worth knowing. And it's always that way when we dig a little. I will not do two things. I try, and I think you would probably agree. One, I never try to do a gotcha.
Right.
I don't want to do that. And I learned to not lead with a question that can have a yes and a no answer.
Yes.
I'm sure you know that.
That's a fatal mistake.
Give me some clues of what hints do you have?
Well, I think that's a very good one. Never ask a question that has a yes or no answer, because you'll get it and then you're stuck. But when I first started this, I asked a good friend of mine, a kind of mentor, how do you do what you do? Because I watched somebody walk into his radio studio unannounced, and you didn't know he was coming. And he talked to him for an hour. And I said, how did you do that? He said, well, I know a little bit about the person, but really I asked a couple questions and then I just listened. Listen. And the listening will bring out the next question. And I found that to be true. The only trick is when you're on, as you know, when you're on radio or television, and you're live, there can't be a lull. You can't sit there, because conversations have these natural lulls where things quiet for a second. And then you start again. We can't do that. So I always have a question in my pocket ready to go in case there's a lull. But I listen a lot because you can't know everything. And what they're going to bring to this, if it's about them, is far better than what you're going to bring to it.
Exactly. One of my in my pocket questions is, and I'll ask you, is what are you reading? What are the books by your bedside or by your desk that you're reading? What do you read, Mike?
Well, I read a lot for the show, so I don't read a lot for pleasure, but I have been reading for about 6 months now, and it's not that thick a book called Sapiens. And it's about all of the other varieties of humanoids who have wandered the earth over time, and how we, the Homo sapiens, kind of beat them out. And I'm only halfway through, so I can't tell you what the whole crux of it is yet, but it talks about how we got into the agrarian economy, and we got into other aspects of developing human life on the planet. And it's fascinating because I thought we were it. No, we were not it. There were lots of different varieties of sapiens, and we just happened, and we didn't even have the biggest brain. We just happened to win the race.
Do you think we can get better? Is there hope? Do you think that we can
improve? I don't know. I have to get to the end of the book. I don't know. I don't know. But I read a lot. I read a ton of material every day for the show. Back before COVID, I would get a packet that was about that thick, full of articles and press clippings and suggestions from the producer about where I might want to take it, and I would read all of it. Now it's all online. I just read links, which I really don't like. I'm a very technically savvy person, but I like paper.
You're like, well, I had a man here that I was going to interview, and he brought me a stack like that of his own.
Yeah.
And then he brought me more pages. And so by the time it was time to interview, and it was interesting, and I skimmed it. I didn't read all of it, but I said, if you have a hobby, bring it with you. And this man, who is still here at the Pines, name is Whit, he brought beautiful needlepoint that he had done.
Wow.
Beautifully framed pieces of needlepoint, which was so much more interesting than where he went to college or where he did whatever. It was lovely.
I was going to ask you, because you do this a lot and you've done interviews for a long time, but since you now tell me that you don't really prepare, that you kind of walk in and just let the conversation happen, I was wondering if you talk to the people you're talking to ahead of time, because I never do.
Never.
Ever.
I did it once and it was a killer.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I think about them afterwards sometime. I was telling Jean here that a priest was, I had a priest who was an HIV/AIDS counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And in our conversation, he disclosed to me that he was HIV positive and was gay. And later he said, I've never said that out loud to anybody. Never said it. And I said, well, because although we tape live, we could splice out if we needed to. And so after the lights were off, and I said, if you want to consider that, we can take it out. And he said, no, I needed to say it. And I felt comfortable here saying it. And I feel wonderful about that he could and would and did. But that wasn't his plan to say it, and it wasn't mine to ask. It's just the way it happened.
But you made him feel, he trusted you. You made him feel comfortable.
Well, he did.
Yeah.
He did, But go ahead.
I was just going to say, you've done, I'm in show host mode. You'll have to forgive me because I sit here in the morning and I do the show from here.
Yes,
so
you do, and I listen.
So I'm hosting now, and I should back off and let you take the lead here for a second.
No, I'm listening. I'm in a listening mode. You're in a host mode.
You've had all these different jobs in your life, and the interviewing, I guess, is probably the least of it. I mean, it's maybe the most important right now, and I think the work that you are doing is truly important because I think people's stories, capturing those stories in a time where we are so divided, shows the humanity that we all have.
I hope so.
But of all the jobs that you've had, of all the things that you've done, which is the one you liked the most?
I've never kept a job. I can't seem to keep a job. I go from one thing to a lot of political things, a lot of church lady stuff. That's a hard thing for me to answer. I suppose over time, I started the first English language church in Cozumel. I didn't go to do that. I mean, it wasn't on my agenda, but I was asked to do it, and I did. And I have watched it grow and change. And now when I go, which I do every year, I'll stand there and I don't know half the people there, and I think, gosh, when I started, I knew everybody, all of 6 or 7, and now it's been a wonderful, satisfying thing. It wasn't on my agenda to do, but I'm glad I did it.
Wow.
And it has a life, it has legs, as people say of stories. Yeah. Tell me, can you think of the most interesting of your interviews? Is there one that stands out from your?
Everybody always asks that question, and I don't have a stock answer, and I have a terrible memory, and usually it's because I'm on to the next day. I'm going to forget his name. He was a famous basketball player, played with the Celtics. Oh, Lord, I can never remember his name. Anyway, he came in to do an interview, and he had written a book, and it was mostly about growing up. Maybe I can bring up his name before this comes to an end, but he brought in the book, and I had read the book cover to cover, and I knew that he didn't like to be interviewed, and I knew that he would not sign autographs. And I walked into the studio. We had to pre-tape it because he couldn't be there for the live broadcast. So I walked in and I said, "Hi, I'm Mike. I want you to know this will be unlike any other interview you've ever done because I know nothing about basketball. So it's not going to be your regular interview about X's and O's and who did what on the court and what the great game that you were in. It's not going to be about that. And his answer to that was, huh. A grunt. It was just a grunt. And I said a couple of other things, and he was monosyllabic. And I thought, So I got on the air and I started reading the intro, and I introduced him and I asked him the first question, and he gave me, it was not a question that you could give a one-word answer to, but it was a one-word answer. And this went on for 5 minutes. I probably went through 10 questions and I got absolutely nothing out of it. I thought, well, we've already promoted this. We can't not do it. So I said to him, I read your book, and there's a lot in that book about your mother and about how your mother taught you how to be a man, and the things that she taught you about being polite to others and doing this and doing that. I thought it took, but it's not. It's not working right now. And he lit up because I think he realized that I had read his book, and he started talking about his mother. And from that point on, he was terrific. And I wish I could remember his name. I just can't. I'm sorry.
Well, when it comes to you, make a note so you'll know next time.
Okay. So,
well, we've had people here at the Pines. One man, the first man I ever interviewed, it was Jack Hart. I wonder if you ever interviewed him. He's the one that jumped out and did a plane jump at skydive.
Oh, wow.
At 99, on his 99, almost his 100th birthday. But he had been at the Pines for several years. A lovely guy named Jack Hart, and he said to me later after the interview, because it was the first time we ever did one. He said, I feel I belong here at the Pines in a different way. I just, people stop and talk to me in the hall, and more than just hello. We can all say hello, but there is that chance. That's what I hope comes out of what I do. It's not a profession with me like it is with you, but it has become a very enjoyable hobby. I also teach the memoir class in Davidson Learns, and have for 6 years. And it's the same thing. It's listening to people's questions, or my questions and their stories, and they're all worth hearing.
Wow.
So,
and capturing somehow. Are you recording these, writing them down? What do you do with the material after you show it?
Well, in the at the Pines, we don't. It's a one-off thing. You come and go, and there's no recording of it. We can't. They've got some regulations about privacy, and I don't know what else. You know that stuff more than I do.
Sure.
But in the Davidson and the memoirs, we've had a few books published and some poetry published, and but it's the same. It's the same thing. And a man stopped me on the beach in Cozumel this last year and said, I taught a class in Mexico 1 month in English. And this man said, I wish I had come to your class. I heard about it. I didn't. I want to write the family story about my father and my grandfather and my great-grandfather. How should I start? And I said what I said to you earlier. I said, well, tell me about what you're reading. And it wasn't at all what he wanted to hear or expected to hear, but it's, and it isn't. I asked people, I said, tell me about your passport. What's your passport look like?
Where do these questions come from?
Up here, sometimes it doesn't come. But anyway, that's.
I could probably never write a memoir because I can't remember this morning. Seriously.
Oh, you could write a memoir with me. I asked people, for example, to write about the first day of school, the first day they ever remembered, and one man wrote an entire legal page on the stairway at his first school because two people, it was wide enough that two people at the same time.
Uh-huh.
And this guy is 70-some years old and hasn't thought about it in all these years. And he wrote and wrote as though that was the purpose of the whole thing. It was just wonderful. So,
Do you remember a lot of what people tell you in the course of these interviews?
Yeah, I remember that, and I remember the weddings. I try to think, I wonder how that worked out. Some I'm nervous about, and not nervous, but for their sake, I don't have a lot of comfort. And here at the Pines, I see we have a woman, Pidge Osborne, who is an artist, and she did all of the that's what comes storyboards, but all of the drawings before advertising was popular. When Ivy was a department store here. I didn't grow up here, so I don't know, but those older, before advertising and photography.
Right.
And so she brought some of her boards with her. And one of her friends said, I've known Pidge for 10 years, and I didn't know anything about her like this. And it was lovely.
We're in the middle of a political season, as most people know. You ran for Congress.
I did.
In 1976?
76. I was
76 in Missouri. How did you win?
No, I wish I had. Then I wouldn't think about it today.
How would you describe the experience? I can't imagine running. So how would you describe the experience?
Oh, it was wonderful.
Really?
It was the bicentennial year. I am an unrepentant junkie, news junkie and political junkie. I had gone to the first United Nations International Women's Year meeting. I was a delegate from the State Department appointed me, and I was with 5,000 women around the world. And I realized that our government was so lacking in women's voices compared to so many countries. And so that's what pushed me. And I really like campaigning because I heard stories. That's just part of what I learned. It was a good experience. Wow. Then. I'm sad today.
But you only ran once. You didn't feel compelled to come back 2 years later and try it again.
No, I started working on other campaigns instead.
I have to live vicariously through the people that I talk to, because people like you, it seems to me, have done everything in the world, and all I have done is what I do.
Mike, I'm an old person. You've got time.
Oh, am I? Look at this.
I think you're doing it. No.
Well, how much more do we have to do here?
How much? You're over 15 already. We're already
over
over
15.
time. This is the one thing I know about you, Mike.
Okay.
And that is you play the accordion, and I play the keyboard. And if next time we meet,
okay,
we'll jam.
Yes, I was going to be a professional accordionist until I realized no one wanted to hear it.
Oh, my husband went to school with Dick Cantini. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, Dick Cantini, yes. Yes. And I used to get a Christmas card every year from Myron Florin, who played the accordion on the Lawrence Welk Show, because I used to perform when I was a kid at the Tony Grant Stars of Tomorrow show on the Steel Pier in Atlantic City. And there were two theaters right together. One was the Children's Theater, and one was the big theater where the stars came. And he came every summer, and he would come over and watch me play, and I would go over backstage and watch him play. And he was just a great guy. And every year for about 20 years, I got a Christmas card from Myron Florin. So,
well, let's if we ever do this again, and I'd love it if we did, then we'll build some music into it.
Okay,
somehow.
Great.
I'm so glad to meet you.
Yes, great to talk with you. Really,
this is really. I look forward to it, and be well. Stay well.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike and Jean. Thank you for tonight's conversation. Thank you for your reminder that the most important part of any conversation is the listening part, and that if we stop and listen, we will hear all sorts of interesting stories. Thank you for sharing yours tonight and for being an important part of our Jetton Society celebration. And now to close our program, board member Carranza Pryor will share a few words.
Hello, I'm Carranza Pryor, a member of the Pines Board of Directors, and it is an honor to be here with you on this momentous occasion, even if only virtually. I have no doubt that the special circumstances no way overcome the enthusiasm we all share for this event and what it celebrates, the people who continue to make the Pines the place we dearly call home. We are especially grateful to Mike Collins and Jean Berg for their providing us with such a meaningful program this evening and for the keen insights that their conversation has generated. Indeed, listening is so important. It leads us to ask the right questions that really get us to know someone more deeply. I also want to thank Steve Jewell, our CEO, for his remarkable leadership of the Pines over these past 5 years. And what a 5 years it has been. In that short time, his accomplishments could hardly have been more significant, two of which I want to highlight now. First of all, Steve helped transform our campus with new buildings and services to meet our current and future needs. And even more significantly, Steve has led the Pines adroitly and safely through this unprecedented pandemic. Steve, thank you for caring so deeply about this community, every one of us, during these challenging times. So the Pines embarks on a new chapter, one with new leadership that will fulfill the plans and promises of new facilities and, of course, new residents. So we celebrate our potential as well as our past at this time, but not without pausing to thank each and every one of you for your faith and support of the mission. Your generosity is the very foundation on which these future buildings will stand as they shelter, sustain, and protect all the residents of this community, now and in the years to come. I'd like to end my time with you tonight by reflecting on someone most dear to me, my grandmother, Lillian Mothershed, whom many of you watching had a chance to know when she lived in Davidson. Well, for those of us who had a chance to know her during any part of her remarkable 98 years, drew inspiration from her optimism, wisdom, and determination. She was a tough old bird, our family would like to say, and a rare one indeed. Standing ramrod straight with her head held high, she cut an imposing figure with a particular sense of flair and style. But the thing about her is that while she appreciated the finer things in life, she didn't pursue them. She had high standards for herself and for others, but was the furthest thing from a snob. In Kipling's word, she could walk with kings, but not lose the common touch. She invested her treasure in people, be they her own children or the children of the families she helped to educate for over 40 years. She wanted to be known for her service and as a woman who lived the words of giving and commitment instead of just speaking them. And that was especially true when it came to her generosity. I know people who've had more, but none who gave more cheerfully or faithfully than her. So it is in her spirit and memory that I say good night and charge us all to live out her example of love and generosity. Thank you.